So I've seen a lot of back and forth reactions from fans of new and old on the zombie showcase. Lots of blabbering on several things, especially the big old debate on the starting pistol versus choosing a starting loadout. Let's just jump into that point and discuss other topics about the zombie formula. Alright, so immediately with this topic, I've seen the newer fans bring up the point that you can choose exactly what you want to start with. If you want the classic pistol setup, then go that route. Tell me if I'm wrong with this assumption, but I don't really think older fans have a problem with the starting loadout specifically. I think they have a problem with the progression of power, the flow of the game. I'm talking mostly about the weapon rarities. You see, Call of Duty Zombies was always replayable because you went into each game with a goal of obtaining more power and being rewarded for it. The way that was done is that you start with one of the weakest weapons and advance your way into something better. That's putting it very simply. The newer system kind of makes it confusing. Let's say you had a Thompson and were wanting to try your luck at the mystery box. You get an LMG as your weapon, and usually players have a pretty good sense at if that is an upgrade or not. So they take it and feel rewarded for their efforts. But you do that in a game like Cold War where the weapon rarity system is in effect, well, how you're judging a weapon's power is no longer really by the gun itself. It's more of if the weapon is a higher rarity than the other, even if you were looking at the gun and think that it would perform much better. Again, this is putting it very simply, and there's more to it than just that. But this system with multiple rarities on one single weapon kind of just dilutes the reward and doesn't feel good getting it. You could get the same weapon and it will either be really bad or really good. So if you go back all the way to the beginning of a match, with this system, it's really only small advantages you get at the spawn, as all the weapons are of the same rarity and can be all upgraded throughout the match. There's not as much reward for you to get better weapons because honestly, the rarity system is just not needed. Pack-a-Punch was the one thing to look forward to with upgrading your weapons beyond another level, which is also probably the reason why they don't have double tap anymore and refuse to add it back, because it conflicts with this system. Putting Pack-a-Punch on top of being able to upgrade your weapon rarity just doesn't feel right and is kind of conflicting. Additional upgrades should be really mostly done through other methods such as perks like double tap and speed cola, while also attachments help out and give you a reason to weapon grind. When I'm spinning the new mystery box, the only weapon that really ever excited me was the wonder weapon, as that always remained one rarity and still felt like the power weapon of the match. Everything else should remain one rarity too, and that's whether or not if the gun packs a good punch behind it or not. So I am still against loadouts, but it's not because of the starting pistol debate. It's because the progression system is not as good as it once was, and it doesn't even really matter if I go into a match with just my pistol. The pistol itself was more of a representation of starting from the bottom and climbing your way to the top. But in the middle of that progression, it is much more diluted and not as fun. Basically, the progression system feels cheap and bland. It's a downgrade, and I believe that's why people are actually complaining. I want to jump in here after speaking on all that and clarify some more. I'm not saying there is no progression in Cold War and Black Ops 6. What I'm getting at is that it's much worse than before. When I said something like the weapon rarity system dilutes the progression, I simply mean it's not as good as just getting a weapon for what it is. You can no longer just look at a weapon and identify if it's a good choice or not. Now you have to grade if it is good, but also if it being a higher rarity will be worth taking. That system doesn't necessarily break progression, but it breaks a lot of the fun. That's why I say the starting pistol versus loadout topic isn't just as straightforward as being able to continue the classic cycle of choosing a pistol and going on your merry little way. We like starting with a pistol because it was better starting from the bottom and going all the way to the top, except now it's not very fun climbing that ladder to the top anymore because of something as little as the weapon rarity system. For those against this opinion and dislike all of what the older zombie fans have to say, I only share this because I think it's important to maintain and improve upon what made zombies good in the first place. Alright, let's air out some other gripes. But mostly I think these are fine and are rather nitpicks. The biggest one in just this bunch is the fact that some of this mode still feels like it's leaning too much into multiplayer in Warzone when I don't believe it ever should. The only thing I think is fine is encouraging multiplayer users into the mode by allowing them to grind for camos. That one is harmless. but other things are more of just a branding issue. When I see armor plates, I think of Warzone. When I see kill streaks, I think of multiplayer. It doesn't feel like the same additions we were making years ago. Perks weren't necessarily new back during their zombie introduction in World at War, but some were new and different from the ones in multiplayer, and also were given their own perk machines with their own iconic jingles, making them really stand out and not just feel like a reused asset, even though the idea was. I do think kill streaks are an interesting idea adding to zombies, but it kind of just feels thrown in as clutter. Something they are doing that I thought was really interesting is the mutant injections. I'm not sure exactly how it will work with obtaining them, but going around and causing chaos as the Mangler I essentially looked at as if they were the specialist abilities we first saw in Black Ops 3, with things such as the Ragnaroks or the skull from Zetsubo. What it feels like right now is that it will be a proper addition, and eventually people will come around to it if they aren't right now, but I suppose it will also depend on how this integrates into the gameplay. Also, with the branding issue and when it comes to reusing assets, if you remember Black Ops 3, then you'd think the Ragnaroks were copy and pasted from the gravity spikes in multiplayer, which yes, they were reused, but then turned into its own thing and felt like they could belong there. The fact that there was another health system layered onto perks like Juggernog just feels strange. And it's even stranger when it's almost exactly the same plating up mechanic used in Warzone. Zombies in Cold War, and now what I'm seeing as Cold War version 2, is essentially getting a little too friendly with their counterparts within multiplayer and Warzone. Lastly, a gripe that I had before that I think is now going to be fixed is the customization of our HUD. Beforehand in Cold War, I thought it was a terrible UI system and really took the immersion out of the experience. Now, if they really do let you customize it a whole crap ton, then I think that's going to fix a big problem I had with simply the look of the zombies mode. Alright, enough of all that, because there is a lot of positives I can speak on too, and it's good to focus on what's going to work. For the most part, I do think we're getting something special within the map design. I know it'll get old the more you play it, but the little scripted events that we saw happening mid-game I thought were something nice to witness, and is something we never really saw much in what we all consider classic zombies. I know people were excited when Black Ops 4 in their cutscenes finally started showing how the outbreaks on all these maps started happening. Now instead of the cutscene, you can see it progressing a tiny bit within the gameplay, and it just opens up for a more immersive experience. The map Terminus I actually think looks fantastic and has quite a bit to explore. How they laid everything out and including rafts in the water will be a heavy hit or miss for players. The wonder weapon doesn't look too crazy, but it does look unique enough to be the wonder weapon of the map. I've already mentioned the mutant injections being a good idea, but the ability to pick up the Mangler cannon is also just another little fun reward you get. I'd look at it as a power up you get from defeating a boss. The characters being actual people rather than filler operator skins is a drastic improvement too. I'm hoping to see a great new crew, mostly just for their dialogue and how they behave throughout a match. It was always a treat hearing our previous crews talk about the story as we were playing or just giving quick humorous lines.
I'm normally more selective about what I put in my mouth.
The fact that PhD Flopper is returning was quite a surprise, but was also bound to happen in due time, and I think it's going to be even better now. This is a perk we've been wanting to see back for a long time, in proper form that is. Do I think Black Ops 6 Zombies will be good? I think it will definitely be better than Cold War, but for the most part, I do still think it will be Cold War version 2. The progression and pacing of zombies is the most important gameplay element, and without fully focusing on what made it good, well then most of these maps will lose a lot of their replay value and will dry out and instead just become a playground for leveling up your weapons. As far as making the mode more casual and leaning into other audiences within multiplayer and Warzone, we need to avoid the crossing over to where zombies starts to lose its identity. We've already seen a good way of introducing players into the mode with more casual maps at launch like Kino all the way back in Black Ops 1. It was simple, fun, introduced new things, was there at release, and everyone can hop on without needing to learn many things. I am predicting a lot of people will be let down with BO6 Zombies and it won't last as long as they'd like. I hope I am proven wrong because there are a lot of strong positives, but I truly believe they will all be held down.